Globe Fine Art is a contemporary fine art gallery located on the famous Canyon Road in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Founder Steve C., a renowned painter himself, exhibits paintings, glassworks, and sculpture that lift your spirits, excite your senses, and inspire your inner life.
It's kind of like the book Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, if you ever read that. You know, at the end, Siddhartha ends up being the ferryman. That's his life. He just takes people over the river. Well, I just sit here, and you never know who's going to come in. It's like a petri dish. Some people come in, they're not even conscious of each other. Some people are from Europe, Asia. Some people are excited about art. Some people know nothing about art. So it's real interesting just to watch the dynamics and to be part of that. And even if I'm tired or, you know, I'm just didn't sleep well or something, and here and 10 o'clock I open the door and the first person comes in, I'm like, welcome, and all of a sudden I'm getting energy from them. It makes me feel good. Also, we have Kriya Yoga meditations here every Sunday. So we move all the sculptures out of the way, we put down huge carpets, we make the desk into an altar, we sage the whole space, candles, and then we have an hour and a half meditation. So I think maybe some of that energy, or it's a way to give back to the community that this is, to sort of make it a sacred space. And the thing about Kriya Yoga is nice because the monks are, they're renunciates, they own nothing. They wear amber clothes. The organization has never asked a dime from anybody. It's kind of like the Carmelite nuns. They're like very quiet, but you know, meditation helps the community, the world, whatever, yourself, helps people be more calm and relaxed. Yeah, when we start with an artist, we start with probably 6 to 8 pieces, and then we try to establish a market for them. And then when we establish a market for them, we know some people like to work in the winter, some people like to work in the spring, so we're going to get a crop of paintings at a certain time, even though they work all year. And so we'll tell somebody, hey, we'll need 12 paintings. This artist here, Richard Potter, right here. See, Richard grew up here. So this is a scene, or his impression, of when he was 8 years old, when he moved here from Chicago. He played in a place called Diablo Canyon, north of the city. And so this is Black Mesa that you can see from Diablo Canyon, and people come to the desert and think it's all brown. But growing up here, moving here at 8 years old, and living here his whole life, you see the richness of the colors and how they change, and the sage and different flowers. And here, rain is so important here. He's sort of connecting the ground that during the golden hour with the sky and with the rain. So that's what's going on here. The interesting about Santa Fe, and even about probably a little of myself, is everything's about energy. Everything's about the flow of energy. So sometimes artists come in, sometimes they're lost and they're looking for something else, and they're asking directions, and I chat them up and I find out that they happen to be an artist, and let me see your work, or something like that might work here. I found a number of artists like that. This furniture artist I found, because he came in and purchased a painting from me, I found out he was a magnificent furniture craftsman, one of the best in the country I've ever seen. He does one piece at a time by himself, but he had soured on galleries. And he had maybe 6 pieces in storage, and he was doing something else. So I saw his work, and I said, well, why don't you just store them here? And so that was about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and now we're developing his career again, because this is what he should be doing. Koa wood only comes from Hawaii. They call it the wood of kings, because only kings could afford it, 100 years ago. And it's made of 60 separate pieces of veneer. This gallery is about lighting up the landmills. People are obsessed with their computers and phones. the news, the politics, natural disasters. It's all tapping into the reptilian brain. So we build neural pathways in the brain towards those things. Well, this is like you're driving up the mountain and everybody's chatting. You get to the overlook and there's this beautiful sunset. Hopefully everybody gets out and shuts up and it's changing. It's gorgeous. You feel it. So when you see a painting like this, it's lighting up a different part of the brain. You know, it's getting away from the analytical. If you're looking at an abstract painting and you're looking for a cow or a chicken or a person, you're using the wrong part of your brain. You have to feel it. You don't have to like it, but you gotta feel it. And you go to the next one. So people come in here after going to a lot of galleries and they say, oh, I don't know, I was exhausted, but when I walked in, now I feel really good in here. We can go over here. This is a Bruce Pizzichillo piece. This is really something because here he's actually painting with glass. This is all glass. He blows the vessel first in white, and then he puts clear glass over it because he wants this three-dimensional effect. And all these other pieces are laid out on a stainless steel table. And then he heats the glass to maybe 1,000 degrees, and then he slowly rolls it on the other pieces of glass, and it picks up all those pieces of glass. And so he's sort of painting with glass, which is a lovely technique. He does the white first, and then he puts clear on it, because you can see very closely, you can see like there's a shadow under here. That's because it's not against the white, it's against the clear. And then that's separating it from the white, so he gets a three-dimensional effect, which is really lovely. And then this top is put on separately. It's a technique called Incalmo, I-N-C-A-L-M-O, which means to be calm and relaxed in Italian. And so he's got to fit this piece on exactly. If he's off a quarter inch, he throws the whole thing away and starts again. So he's got to put this on hot, and it's got to fit perfectly. And then it's sitting on a table. Now this wood is Amboina wood. This wood is the most expensive wood in the world. It comes from the barrels of trees in Indonesia. It's not a tree, so you can't cultivate it. It grows on the sides of trees. And it was really popular in the 20s and 30s because if you look at the dashboard of Rolls Royces, this is what they make the dashboard out of. Just the craftsmanship was so elegant and beautiful. Okay, this is Laura Goodwin, and she went to Japan, and these are persimmons made of glass. And this is how they dry persimmons in Japan. They hang them on bamboo, they string them up, they dry them out, and then when they're dry, they cut them up and put them in salads. So when she came back, she was so excited by seeing those, she had to make these out of glass, and she made these beautiful copper leaves, and we started hanging them. The beautiful thing about this is not only the persimmons, but the shadows. We sold the first one, we did 72 persimmons. We sold it to a Pepsi executive in London who had been in Japan for 5 years, and he wanted something Japanese, but not overtly Japanese because his house was very modern. These are all blown. She blows them with a pipe, spins them, and when she gets them just the right size, she actually scores them here. And then when they're cool, she cools them, and then she puts this sort of coating on them, like with frit, which is powdered glass, and then she puts them in the kiln again, and they sort of flare up, and that gives it sort of a bubbly effect, a textured effect, like real fruit. So this tree is made of 2 miles of stainless steel chains. You can see it's just lovely. And this is steel, and this is mild steel that's patinaed, so as long as it gets wet every once in a while, it'll always look the same. The beautiful thing about this is it's a kinetic sculpture. When the wind blows at 60 miles an hour, all the chains move like it's a hula skirt, all in unison. And it'll always look the same. It's surgical grade steel, and there's no maintenance. it's just a beautiful piece. And then we have LED lights. We light it up at night, and we change the colors. Like for 4th of July, we had it going red, white, and blue. And the artist did a huge one. Took him the first one. Took him a whole year to do. It was a weeping willow tree. It's all he did for a whole year. And he said, I'll never do it again. And I saw it on his website, and I said, well, make me an affordable tree. And so now we started making more and more. The thing is, I got the first tree, I sold it right away. It took me 8 months to get another tree. So this is permanent here. And then we take orders for them. And the nice thing is that this tree does not need a cement pad to bolt it down. You just have a base, you put the river rocks in, you put it anywhere you want, and then if you move, you take the tree with you. So these come up from Argentina, these and the big green ones in the back. He's in Buenos Aires, and they're just beautiful pieces of glass. And then this guy back here, Gerry Newcomb, with the blue, see, he's creating a cosmic stream in the desert. So this is like a stream or a river of blue iridescent glass, and you see little shells in there. And the nice thing is this glass, I don't think it exists anymore. It's iridescent, so this is one of the only glasses that you would light from the front instead of the back, because the qualities, reflective qualities in here. So it's called the Empress's necklace. And the reason it's not out front is because this is as far as we could get it with the arm of the crane, because it's so heavy. We can't put it anywhere else because of the electrical lines. So we got it in the back, and this is as far as we got. So this is made of industrial glass that's used for skyscrapers. So it can be in anywhere. I've got pictures of other sculptures of his in the snow. And then this is recycled stainless steel. So he likes to use recycled elements. And when the light comes through here, and you see from the side where it's backlit, it looks like water on the Caribbean, which is just lovely. See, this is Curt Sullan, and this glass takes 3.5 months to make. So this is put in the kiln. There's a mold made. The glass is put in. He blasts that at 1700 degrees, melts the glass, and then he drops the temperature to 900 degrees. And now this has got to get from 900 to 70 degrees over 3.5 months. There's no rule books for making glass this thick. This is about 8 or 10 inches thick. And so the first month, the temperature drops 0.5 degree an hour. So it's calibrated to go down 12 degrees a day. And then the second month, 1 to 2 degrees, and the third month, 2 to 3 degrees. And after 3.5 months, he opens the kiln, and maybe 70% of the time it's in great shape, and 30% of the time it fell out of the mold or it didn't heat evenly. But we have to cool the glass very slowly, so there's no stress on the glass, because you don't want it breaking before it comes out of the mold. And even if the glass is stressed, it could break 6 months after. Yeah, sometimes you can get impurities in the glass, and with heating and cooling, especially in Santa Fe, that could break the glass as well. So you have to be careful that the glass is pure. But I know glass artists, will be having dinner at their studio, and all of a sudden their ears go up like deer. Like, what's the matter? What's the matter? And they heard like a crack somewhere. And, that nobody would, no normal person would hear it. But it's like something stressed. It looks like almost like crystals coming out of the ground. And then the artist makes the steel. He gets the steel from old turn of the century factories. And the interesting thing is he's got to adhere the glass to the steel and make sure it's aesthetically pleasing, but also so that the glass will not fall over and break or hurt somebody, because this is probably 250 pounds of glass. So when we ship it to a client, we separate the glass from the steel and put it together on site. We just sent a glass piece to Seattle. It was 500 pounds of glass. went in the living room because he had a chandelier above it. It was gorgeous. It was about 9 feet tall. And what the client wanted to do was we put a strip of LEDs behind it, but expensive LEDs. They were like $500. That way, he plugged it in right into a plug in the middle of the living room, and now it could change any colors he wants, and it works on Alexa. So he says, Alexa, make the sculpture blue, or make the sculpture dance with, a conga beat or something. And so he sent me all these pictures, which I'll show you, of the sculpture, all different colors. Josh Pass, and Josh was the head jewelry designer for Todd Reid. Todd Reid is the designer of jewelry, and so Josh used to design like $10,000-$20,000 diamond earrings, and you can see all the details. And so this is about two people coming together to form new memories. And so here's a nice bell. This is patinaed bronze, but you can see the details are amazing. And then these are all the experiences that the two people have together. The artist's secret is you take a little bartender's friend and a magic eraser and a little water, because if birds sit on it or something, and then every once in a while we just shine it up. But basically with the rain, cleans it up, good to go. This is a sculpture by James Kelsey. And James is in the Seattle area. So I think the idea was sort of like, started with like the life cycle of a salmon, and then the life cycle of us. And now it's sort of like the Earth and the planets with the Hubble telescope, but it's about cycles. And everyone loves this great ball here, reflection, especially with the flowers. And the funny thing was when there was the Pokemon craze going, somebody put a Pokemon here, and so people would come with their phones and show up, and it was one of those creatures here. And there's probably more pictures taken of this sculpture and the tree sculpture than I think anything in Santa Fe, because whole families can pose here, and they just love it. We have a section on our Instagram called Art Dogs, and so all the dogs that come into the gallery, we have photos of them in front of their favorite paintings, and then we post the dogs because people would sit out here with their dogs or read the paper. We just want to have a nice, comfortable spot, and we want it to be an experience from the gardens to the sculptures. Just enjoy. And here's a nice piece. So this is Richard Potter again, who grew up here, and this is encaustic. So this is made of beeswax. This is a 3,000-year-old technique, and I believe this painting was influenced because here in Santa Fe, this time of year, it'll rain on one side of the street and be sunny on the other. And so when that happens, we all go outside because we know there's a rainbow somewhere. And so here, this is sort of the rain falling, starting to refract the light to become a rainbow. So that was his influence on this, which is a beautiful abstract painting made all out of beeswax. And we've shipped these to South Korea, Japan, Bavaria. Huge ones went to London. So the wax is sealed up to 150 degrees. The colors this is pigment, oil pigment. So to make oil paints, for example, you need the pigment, and then you need like linseed oil and turpentine, and you mix this with the paints, and you make oil paint out of it. So this is the same with the wax. His palette is heated when you plug it in. So he has all these tins of melted wax. So he can either put the pigment in the wax, or when it's done like this, he puts the pure pigment over the wax because it's actually more brilliant than an oil painting. And you can see the whites, how the whites go from like a blue white to an amber white. This is the original color of the beeswax right here. And no bees were harmed in the making of this painting. So this is an interesting painting, because this is Gina Freschet, and Gina was a children's book author and illustrator in New York City for many years. She also used to do black and white drawings for the op-ed page of the New York Times. And coming from the children's book, but also in New York City and seeing a lot of graffiti, So here's her impression, for example, of Wyoming. So you could see sort of the childlike drawing, but also much more sophisticated than that. And this represents the Snake River, I believe. And then here's the Grand Tetons in the background. But it's more of an impression and a feeling of maybe driving through and the colors of the fields, where all of a sudden the antelope will appear, the fences they have everywhere, and the snow fences. And here's maybe a feed bag for, the horses are on their way. And so this is sort of her impression, and it's more of a feeling than a literal interpretation of a corral and a horse. Yeah, I like to find the story about each painting, either specifically where the artist is coming from, or maybe it's about the colors, or just an anecdote even about the artist. Because some people have their own impressions of the paintings, and that's just as valid. So you don't want to give them the story and ruin it for them. So I might sort of suggest what the artist, if they're asking me, but I know when to stop because they have their own story and they're having their own fun with this. And maybe they're from Wyoming and this means something special to them. This painter is Reid Richardson. And the funny thing is Reid is from Tempe, Arizona, but he loves to paint trees. Now in Reid's paintings, it's all symbolism. So these are aspens. Aspens are all connected as one organism, like bamboo under the ground. And the trees represent us, either individually or collectively. So if the trees represent us, he's putting them in sort of groups, family or friends, and he's saying we're having an earthly experience and we're all connected, and we're also part spirit. So he's showing that we're part spirit, but we're having an earthly experience. And he does that in different ways. And then in this painting here, this is the same, except this is red. So red represents passion. If the tree represents us, this is about living a passionate life. And in the artist's mind, how do you live a passionate life? Where you find the stillness inside yourself. The water represents consciousness. And once you find the stillness inside yourself, you can live like the yogis do, and you become the objective observer, but you're also present every moment. You know how we give parties sometimes and we're running around and doing everything for everyone, all of a sudden the party's over, like, well, what just happened? Instead, find the stillness, you can be present every moment, live a passionate life, but we're also part spirit. So that's what the artist is saying, and he also makes his stretcher frames 3 inches thick and paints around the side to give it even more of a three-dimensional quality. So this painting, this is Stephanie Shank, and it's very interesting. Stephanie is probably, she's in her 60s now, and Stephanie's mother was a German expressionist. So Stephanie had a natural talent for painting, but her mother, being a German expressionist, always had friends coming over and they were painting these big, dark, brooding figures, and everything was dark. And the funny thing is that being the rebellious child, Stephanie becomes a colorist. You would think the child would go to the dark things, but that's what her mother did. So she's naturally gifted, but she becomes a colorist. And the wonderful thing about this painting is Stephanie sort of manipulates your eye. So the viewer has to look at the orange first. And then she sort of makes triangles, like we've got orange here, we've got orange here, we have orange here. So she knows your eye has to go here, here, here. Like Leonardo da Vinci would do this, like in the Pieta and stuff, create triangles. So Stephanie's showing with color. So there's the oranges. So your eye goes around, and then it comes maybe to the green. So then the green goes here, green goes here. So you can see how she's creating just very subtly abstracts triangles. The kind of the olive green goes here, the blues, she's doing the same thing. So she's sort of creating triangles on triangles on triangles, but she's also putting in her own line. And I love when artists use line because they're completely distinctly hers. So as your eye goes around these different triangles, so now she's taking you around the surface, and then very slowly you start to go into the surface. And when you go into the painting, you see the whites are made of all the colors from the outside surface, but in a very subtle way. Back here is oranges, and there's yellows, and there's blues. And so what she's doing is basically taking you on a roller coaster ride of color, first on top of the surface and then into the painting. And so that's, hopefully, if you get that experience with this, then you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your spine, and you just enjoy the ride. Here in Santa Fe, this is what my gallery is about. And they might want to do some darker melancholy things and send that to me, and I'll say, well, that's great, but show that in New York City or Chicago or someplace where it's snowy and cold, because I lived in New York City and I saw the galleries there. I lived in Paris, France. I saw the galleries there, and I lived in Latin America, in Oaxaca, Mexico for 7 years, and I saw the colors there. So regionally, we are affected by the weather and the colors. So this is what I want to bring to the Southwest.